What's up, guys? Ben here. We're bringing you another video today. We're doing a series of preview videos about all the teams attending CDL champs this season. We're on video number 3. We're going to talk about the 6th seed. That's the Seattle Surge. Interesting season for them so far. We're going to talk about it. They had a good major 3, bad major 4. Let's talk about it. What do they need to fix going into champs if they want to go ahead and lift a trophy at the end of the tournament? Let's dive in. So let's talk a little bit about Seattle's journey so far this season. Prior to this year, let's be honest, guys, it has not been a fun journey for Seattle in the first 2 years of the league. Year 1, they had that veteran team. I personally saw that team and I was like, this is fucking hilarious. They're going to be asked at search. You know what happened? They sucked at search. They pulled up the Cold War, different roster, same result, just really uncompetitive. They had a decent placing at the last major 5 when they beat FaZe, but outside of that, it was not a good season. So they made big changes this year, right? They get rid of Joey Nubbs in the coaching staff. They bring in Sam Phoenix. Early on, by the way, they brought Sam in like in May of last year. Like, that's how early. They bring in accuracy to go ahead and kind of lead the troops, and they make a couple of interesting acquisitions as well. They bring in Mac from New York when that team kind of falls apart. They bring in Sib from Atlanta FaZe, who was a substitute, didn't really have a spot on the roster from a starting perspective. And they brought in an interesting player in Pred, someone that had been kind of around the scene for a while, hadn't been at the CDL, but had a lot of hype with him. And the year started off pretty good for Seattle. They made it to Kickoff Classic Finals. They lost to Toronto Ultra, some tough Berlins, but okay, I mean, this team's young and disgusting. Let's get it. And, decent showings in the first couple of events. They got last at the first event, but they got top 6 in Major 2. And then things really started to turn around in the middle of the season. They didn't play well at Pro-Am Classic. They actually did not get out of groups, but they had an incredible Major 3 qualifier. They ended up winning the event. A lot of really good teams at that event. They smoked FaZe in the finals, but then Major 4 came around and they struggled again. And thanks to their Major 3 performance and as good as they played in Major 2, they had enough points to qualify for champs, but they're not sitting kind of on the top side of the seed. So from a Vita perspective, it's going to be tough. I really like this tweet from Breaking Point. They tweet a bunch of these pictures and they have a bunch of stats about teams. So we're going to use those to break some stuff down here. Overall, pretty 500 record, average placing. We just talked about a little bit, whatever. I think the strength for me so far for this team this year has really been their Tuscan. 28 and 18 across all modes in Tuscan is amazing. And that includes 12 and 4 in control and 9 and 7 in a hard point. But as good as they were at Tuscan, this really stands out to me as sort of worrying. 1 and 12 in Gavitu, man. There's a lot get said about auto vetoes. If you have an auto veto in one game mode and you're flexible on the others, fine. But I think Seattle's win conditions are very tough this season because they can't play Gavitu control and they can't play Gavitu hardpoint. And you have a lot of really good Bocage teams, a lot of really good Tuscan teams, a lot of really good Berlin teams. And if you're auto-beating Gav, they're going to be able to take away, Bocage hardpoint. They're going to be able to take away Tuscan control or Berlin control and force you to play a map that they have a better advantage on because you're not going to be able to play Gavitu control or Gavitu hardpoint. So that's something that Seattle really needs to work on because their win conditions are really tough. Taking a look at individual performances this year, I mean, overall, the sling's been actually pretty good. Lamar's averaging a 0.97, which is fine. You don't need him to average a 1 on this team because you see what Sib's doing, you see what Pred's doing, what Smack's doing. I think in particular, Pred is a player I want to talk about. I mean, he's come in as a rookie and been a top player in the game. You could probably argue potentially top 3 player of the season. Is a lock for Rookie of the Year, is probably a lock for the All-Star team. I think one note on Seattle, when you think about kind of the team performances, right? Overall sort of not, they have one really good LAN and a bunch of Met ones. We've seen teams like this, right? Seattle is a young team. Lamar's got a lot of experience. Mac, this is, his 2.5 year in the league. Pred's first CDL year in the league. Dante's been around, but this is his first pro level league. He's been playing, open bracket tournaments for a minute. So I expect this team to be up and down this season. What worries me a little bit though was that you kind of start to think maybe this team might have peaked at Major 3 and now they're sliding down. So I'm hoping maybe they can kind of rebound from that event. And if we kind of break down the stats in Major 4, Mac, who, as you saw, those stats are really good so far this season. Well, in Stage 4, he had a 0.91 KD the entire stage. So that's not good. Lamar, we showed numbers pretty good so far overall in the season, but in Stage 4, he had a 0.9. So to me, the individual slaying really fell off last major. And you're hoping it's just a blip in the radar because, again, limited field event and champs, you want to be in best form. If you're coming in for Major 4 and you got last, it's not really the momentum you want. There's one other thing I also want to talk about with their Major 4, Stage 4 performance. We look at sort of their overall kind of win records across maps and modes. 4 and 2 in control, that's pretty good. 3 and 1 Tuscan, I mean, they've been a good Tuscan control team most of the season. What really concerns me, again, poor in hardpoint, not playing Gav at all, by the way, this stage. They hadn't played a Gav since stage 3. The S&D really worries me. 2-6, coming off a really good stage. Your S&D instantly regressing. There's a game mode that if you're a good S&D team, even when sort of the slang's not there, you're sort of able to feel that S&D. I'm a little worried about that number. It's something they're going to really have to turn around, considering how strong some of these other teams are in Respawn that they're going to face off against. And speaking of that, well, let's talk a look at their matchup going into champs and kind of their prospects. So they're going to play early on Thursday. I believe they're actually the first match at 3 o'clock East Coast time. And they're going to be facing off against the London Royal Ravens, who are also not coming in most amazing form. I would say London was probably the better team in Major 4, but better in the sense of they were great online and they pulled up to LAN, and it wasn't great at that point, let's be honest. It has been a minute since these teams played. Was last week of the online portion of Major 3, and Seattle absolutely smoked London, but this is without Gizmo, when London was definitely kind of at their lowest point as a team. And the only other time that they played was during the Major 1 cycle, and you see here, London had their number in that series. Again, London with Gizmo. Not much to take away from historically with these two teams, because they've only played twice, and it's been a minute since they faced off. My personal thoughts, kind of thinking of this series, considering London's kind of struggles on LAN, I think Seattle probably might be able to squeeze it out. But again, we go back to the S&D thing. It's going to have to be sort of a game 5 heater. I think we take a look at these two teams. Like, neither of them are great. But if I had to pick one of those two teams and had to pick a winner, I probably got Seattle. But it doesn't look good for them after that. You know, they got to play their Phaser in New York, and they're not going to be favored in that series. And they're going to have to bounce down to the bottom side of losers. There's a bracket flip. So you're probably playing Toronto or Boston. So to me, if I look at the Seattle team, my expectation for them this event is I don't have them in my 4 contenders. They're very much a candidate, I think, to get top 6 at this tournament, if I have to be brutally honest. But I will say, if they improve their S&D, they get Mac back to the form he was in Major 3, you know, they're a decent enough control team that I like them across those modes. And even with the Gav auto veto thing, like, they might be able to get an upset or two here. And look, you're only 2 wins away in winners from getting top 3, so you never know. And yeah, I mean, you know, it's an interesting prospect for Seattle. I think my final thoughts are, you know, regardless of how this Seattle team does at champs this year, it's been a good year for them. New roster, new contracts, no success the years prior. This year, they finally got an event win for the organization. And that core of Pred, Mac, and Sib, look, for all the up and downs that they've had this season as a team, that is a prospect and that is a core of a team that you can really bank on for the coming years. We've talked a lot on streams and on the flank, and I've talked about in past videos, like, it is hard to build a consistent core of a winner. Like, the only team that's been able to do it year in, year out has really been FaZe. A lot of teams have come and gone, and yes, we're gonna have Optic fans saying, you know, our teams have been good when we were on Empire, on Huntsman, and sure, but not to the level that FaZe was for the last 3 years. I think Seattle can get there, but it's going to take some development on that road. And this might be one of those years where they're not going to go to champs and get top 4. And it's a lesson for this team of, hey, we need to improve our practice. We need to improve our mindset, because we've got the gun skill to match up with all these folks. We got screwed because we have a shallow map pool. We got screwed because we were inconsistent. We improved that going to next season to your game cycle. We get good at this game early. We ride that through year 1, year 2. Like, we can get into a 30 of this project and be the best team in the game. But as always, guys, that'll do it for this video. Let me know what you liked or disliked in the comments. If you could subscribe to my channel, I'd appreciate that as well. I'm going to be putting out content every single day from now until COD Champs. Take a little bit of a break after Champs for like 24 hours, and then we'll start getting some off-season content for you guys, so I'm super excited to dive in. Thank you guys so much, and see you on the next one.